Nick here, and today you will learn how to play Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion by going through scenarios 1 to 5. Setup. Take the scenario book and read the introduction story on its cover. Then open the book to scenario 1. Take the sticker from the sticker sheet labeled Roadside Ambush and place it on B1 square on the city board. Each player chooses a character to play. If you're playing solo, choose 2 characters. The Demolitionist class is specialized in melee damage and obstacle destruction. The Red Guard specializes in protection and monster manipulation. Hatchet is best at ranged damage and looting. And Void Warden specializes in healing and support. Get your character's small and large tuck boxes identifiable with the character symbol. Give each player a hit point dial and their initiative order token. Open the large box and take your character from the small box. Take the character mat and place it in front of you. Take the deck of smaller cards with no warning, and the first 6 cards from the larger deck that does not have a warning text. You should have the player reference card and all the cards with an A in the crown under the title. Keep the decks with warnings inside the box. Take the hit point dial and change the red side of the dial to the red number below the number 1 on the bottom of your character mat. Then, change the blue side of the dial to 0. Place all the characters' initiative tokens near the center of play. Place your character's figure on any one of the starting hex icons. Note that you cannot have 2 characters on the same hex. Locate the scenario key listing to identify which monsters are used in the scenario. Locate their standees, monster stat cards, and initiative order tokens. Note that for scenario 1, there's only one monster type, the Vermling Raider. Place the stat card in one of the monster envelopes while keeping the number 1 on the upper left corner. Then place it next to the scenario book. Look at each hex containing a monster and check the rank indicator below the monster icon. Refer to the rows below according to the number of characters in play. Then check the indicator inside the row. If it is black, don't place a monster on that hex. If it is white, place a normal monster identifiable by the white plastic stand. And if it's gold, place an elite monster identifiable by the gold plastic stand. For example, if we're playing a 2-player game, I should look at the first row and this hex indicates I should add a normal Vermling monster here. Take and shuffle the 20 attack modifier cards labeled M and place them next to the monster stat card. Then, take the plastic token tray containing the game tokens and place it next to the scenario book. Check the scenario goal and read the scenario introduction. Sometimes, extra instructions will be listed here. And now you're ready to learn how to play scenario 1. Your objective is to complete the scenario goal of killing all enemies. The game is played in rounds. Every round follows this order: card selection, ordering of initiative, character and monster turns, and the end of round. Let's start with the card selection. All players must select, in secret, 2 ability cards they want to play. You may communicate with other players to discuss strategy with general statements about their actions, but players cannot show their cards to each other nor give specific information about any numerical value or card title. The first thing you should do is look at your initiative number on the cards. Out of the 2 cards you choose, 1 card is played as the initiative card. The initiative will determine the order characters and monsters will attack. The lower the number, the higher are the chances you will play first. Let's talk about the card actions. Each card has a top action and a bottom action. Every round, you must play the top action of one of your cards and the bottom action of the other card. For example, on their turn, the player decides to use these 2 cards. They decide the initiative number will be the one on this card, and the player will play the top action of this card and the bottom action of this other one. Once all players have selected their cards, each player flips the chosen cards and compare the initiative number from one of the 2 cards. Take the initiative order tokens and place them from low to high based on each of these initiatives, like this. For scenario 1, enemies have a fixed initiative of 50. Once the initiative is set, starting from the top, going to the bottom, characters and enemies play their turns. We'll talk about the character's turn and then about the monster turn. If it is a character, it's time to play a top action from one card and the bottom action from the other card in any order. Each action is read from top to bottom. If you play a move ability, you can move your characters up to the number of hexes stated on the card. You can move to any adjacent hex, even going through allies. But you can never end your movement on a hex occupied by another figure. And you cannot move through enemies, obstacles, or walls. If you play an attack card represented by this symbol, you will deal the damage written here to a target enemy within range. If there is no symbol below the attack value, it means it's a melee attack, so your character needs to be adjacent to a target. If the attack has the range icon, it means it's a ranged attack, and the target needs to be within X hexes of the attacker. Example, this attack deals 3 damage to a target character that is within 2 hexes of range. Also, any targeted enemy must be within line of sight in order to be considered a valid target. To check this, draw a line from the target figure to the attacker. If it does not touch a wall line, you have line of sight. Note that only walls block line of sight. Obstacles and figures do not block line of sight. Some attacks also have the target icon. The attacker can target a number of enemies within the attack's range, but you cannot target the same enemy multiple times on the same attack. Once an attack is performed by a character or enemy, the figure must flip the top card of their modifier cards deck. Normally, you flip one modifier card per target you are attacking. But if you are doing a ranged attack and the target is adjacent to you, you must flip 2 cards and then apply the worst of the 2. This is called disadvantage. If you flip a modifier card with a number, just add or subtract the number from the attack value. For example, this character played an attack ability with the attack value of 2. They flip a -1 card, so their total attack value is 1. If you draw 2x card, your attack value is doubled. And if you draw this symbol, the attack does no damage. Some cards also apply conditions to the target. These are the 4 conditions applicable to Scenario 1. They stay on the target until the end of the target's next turn. Whenever an attack deals damage or a condition to a monster, add damage and/or condition tokens on the stat envelope on the section corresponding to the target. When the number of damage tokens is equal or higher to the monster's health, the monster is defeated. Remove its figure and the tokens from the board. For example, this character is attacking Monster 3. They deal 2 damage and muddle, placing 2 damage tokens and a muddle token on the Monster 3 section of their envelope. The other ability cards are Heal, which allow the caster to heal a certain amount of health on themselves or an ally within range. Whenever you heal health points, turn the red side dial up that amount. Note that you cannot heal above the maximum hit point value. Some ability cards only target the caster, which is represented by this text. And some other abilities might grant actions to other players or allow the caster to destroy obstacles. When you grant an action to another character, use the character's own modifier cards. Obstacles are the hexes with a green outline. Figures cannot move to them. When an obstacle is destroyed, add a destruction token. Destroyed obstacles are now traversable hexes. Once you use your ability and modifier cards, place them on their discard piles. Now let's talk about monster turn. When the initiative order reaches a monster, if there are multiple monsters of the same type, elite monsters, which are the ones with the gold plastic stands, have priority. First, take a look at the monster's stat card. The white section contains the stats of the normal monster, and the gold section contains the stats of the elite monster. The first stat is the monster health. The second is the base movement value. The third one is the monster's base attack value. This is how a monster performs its turn on Scenario 1. They focus on a target, then they move towards that target, and then they attack. Let's start with how they focus. The focus will be the character that the monster can attack using the least amount of movement. If there is already a character adjacent to the monster, then that character becomes the focus. Now let's go through the movement step. If the target is already adjacent to the monster, skip this step. If this is not the case, move the monster's figure the number of hexes on the monster's base move value. But you can never end the monster movement on a hex occupied by another figure, and you cannot move through obstacles or walls. If the monster cannot get closer, it will not move. Also, if there are multiple valid paths within range, the player decides which path to take. Once the monster moved, it will attack if it can. Take the monster's attack value and draw a modifier card from the monster's attack modifier deck, just like I did for the character. If the target character receives damage, take their dial and reduce the hit point value from the red side. If a character reaches 0 on the red dial, they become exhausted. The figure is removed from the map and cannot participate in the game until the end of the scenario. If all characters become exhausted, the scenario is lost and you have to retry. Once everyone on the initiative order has ended their turn, the round ends. If any attack modifier deck has flipped over a card with the shuffle icon, shuffle the discard pile back to its deck. Play the next 2 rounds until all players are out of cards in their hands at the end of the 3rd round. When a character has at least 2 cards in their discard pile, they may perform a short rest at the end of the round. Take all the cards from the discard pile, shuffle them, and place a random one on the right side of the character mat in their lost pile. The rest of the cards return to the player's hand. Anytime you would rather keep the card that was lost, suffer 1 damage and draw another random card from the discard pile to place on the lost pile. Because you play 2 cards every round, you will need to do more short rests as you play. Be careful though, if you are unable to play 2 cards because all of them are on the lost pile, your character becomes exhausted, just like when it reaches 0 health. Once you have killed all enemies, read the conclusion and reward section. Add sticker 2, a hole in the wall, on your B1 section of the Gloomhaven map. Scenario 2. Setup. Flip to Scenario 2, a hole in the wall, and do the same setup as in Scenario 1 with the following additions. Each player takes the 2 level B cards from their deck of abilities and swap those with the 2 level A cards with the same name. You should have 4 level A and 2 level B cards. Place the monsters, but not the ones after the door. Next, take the 4 ability cards labeled Basic Vermling Raider and place it next to the scenario. Place a money token, a treasure token, or a trap tile on each hex depicting their respective icons. And now you're ready to learn how to play Scenario 2. Scenario 2 plays like Scenario 1 with the following mechanics. When an enemy dies, they drop 1 money token in the hex in which they died. Money or treasure tokens can be collected by using the loot action. Any coin or treasure left on the map at the end of the scenario are not collected. If a character is moved to a node with a trap tile, they take 3 damage and the trap is removed from the map. When a player figure moves to a door hex, the door opens. Place an activation token in it to indicate that the door is now open. All monsters inside the newly revealed room are set up. When playing action cards, instead of performing any of the abilities printed on the top or bottom of a card, you can use the card to perform an attack 2 as a top action or a move 2 as a bottom action. This is particularly useful because of the cards with this symbol. Some B cards have it. This icon means that if you perform the action, the card will immediately be placed in your lost pile instead of your discard pile. Abilities that have this icon are usually very powerful, so you should be careful about using them. Some attacks will also display area effects, like this. If the card has a gray hex, it means you need to be where the gray hex is to affect the red hexes. This is considered a melee attack. If an area of effect ability specifies a range and has no gray hex, one of the red hexes need to be within the specified range, even if that hex does not contain an enemy. All enemies within the red hexes will receive the damage. If an attack has the push or pull icon, the target is forced to move X hexes away or towards the targeting figure. You may use these to push or pull enemies towards traps. If an attack adds the disarm condition, place the disarm token on the affected figure. The figure cannot perform any attack abilities on the figure's next turn. Remove the token afterwards. If a character suffers damage, you may choose to negate the entirety of the damage by placing 1 card from your hand or 2 cards off the discard pile on the lost pile. Be careful though. This means that you will have less cards available to play and your character will go into exhaustion faster than normal. Monsters have 2 new mechanics, Monsters will always avoid traps when moving. But if there is no path available towards the target besides a trap tile, then the enemy will move into it. From Scenario 2 and moving forward, monsters will perform abilities every round based on a random card from their ability deck. Flip the top card right after all the characters have revealed their 2 cards for the round. The card will determine the monster's initiative and the abilities they will perform on their turn. If a card does not say move, the monster doesn't move. Monster abilities provide value modifications for the monster's base stat. For example, if a monster ability says attack +1 and the monster attack value is 2, the monster would perform an attack 3. Then, draw the monster modifier attack card and sum it up. Some ability cards will have the shuffle icon in the bottom right corner. If the card you drew has it, all player cards from this deck are shuffled back into the deck at the end of the round, just like the attack modifier cards. Some attacks will be ranged. They work just like hero ranged attacks. If an enemy moves before using the ranged attack, it will move only the minimum necessary to be able to hit a target. If an enemy performs a ranged attack while adjacent to their target, they gain disadvantage, which means you have to draw 2 monster attack modifier cards and pick the worst of them instead of drawing just one. At the end of the scenario, read the conclusion and give the rewards to the players. Each gold token you collect is worth 2 gold. Add that amount to your character's sheet. Also, don't forget to add the gold acquired by completing the scenario. If you collected the treasure, look at the number on the hex, and look for the reward on the glossary book, page 31. Add to the board the Scenario 3 sticker. Then search the item deck and pick the ones that range from number 1 to 13 and place them next to the city map. Between each scenario you play, characters may buy, sell, or trade items with other characters. This is the cost of the item, and this is the item type. You may own multiple items of the same type, but you can only carry into a scenario 1 head, 1 body, 1 feet, 2 hand, and 1 small item. If an item has this symbol, it means that it can be used once per scenario. Once used, flip the card to show it was consumed. At the end of the scenario, the consumed item is refreshed. If it has the spent icon, it can be used once per long rest, which will be described on Scenario 3. Once used, rotate the card. If there is no icon, you can use the card whenever the situation allows. Finally, each character should add the following level 1 cards to their pool for a total of 8 cards. Scenario 3. Setup. Open the scenario book to Scenario 3, the Black Ship. This scenario also uses the supplemental scenario book. Open on page 2 and place it next to the scenario book. Retrieve the 2 enemies on this scenario, the Giant Viper and the Zealot. Get their stats cards, standees, and the initiative order tokens. Set up both monsters to level 1 and set up the 2 Zealots in the starting room. The other rooms are closed. Keep in mind that enemies are only placed inside rooms when a door is opened. Retrieve and shuffle each of the monster's basic ability deck of cards. Place the remaining tokens as described in Scenario 2 and then read the introduction and the special rules. Stop reading before the section breaks. Note that these texts are read only once the door with the corresponding number has been opened. And now you're ready to learn how to play Scenario 3. Play the scenario using the rules learned so far, plus the rules explained next. This scenario has hexes contained within a purple border. These are called difficult terrain, which means that figures must spend 2 movement points to enter the hex. Push and pull are not affected by difficult terrain. Some of the new level 1 cards give experience points, and this is represented by this symbol. When an action is taken, the character gains the number of experience specified. Add the amount to the blue side of the character's dial. Note that some actions specifies that experience is gained only with specific conditions written on the text. Also note that basic actions never trigger the experience of the accompanying action. Some level 1 cards might also have active bonuses. Persistent bonuses are represented by this symbol. When this card is played, place it on the active area above the character. The action remains into play until the end of the scenario or their number of uses run out. Place a character token on the first slot to the left. When the token moves off the last slot, remove the card from the active area, placing it either in the lost or discard pile, depending on whether the action has the lost icon. Every time the token moves to a slot with the experience icon, the character gains that experience. Round bonuses are represented by this symbol. These cards are active from the time the action is played until the end of the round. At the end of the round, place it on the discard or lost pile, depending on whether the action contains the lost icon. Shield is an active bonus ability that allows the character to suffer less damage. The reduction is calculated after the attack bonuses and attack modifier cards are played. For example, if a 2 attack is performed against a character with a 1 shield and that attack is doubled by a modifier card to 4, then you subtract the shield from the 4 attack, bringing the damage to a total of 3. Note that multiple shield bonuses stack, but they don't affect trap damage. Jump allows the figure to bypass obstacles, enemy figures, traps, and difficult terrain, ignoring the movement penalties. Figures cannot jump through walls, and they must end on a viable hex. If the player lands on a trap, the trap is sprung. Also note that Scenario 3 monsters have new negative conditions on their stat cards. In this example, the elite version of the Zealot has one of them. These effects are applied to targets whenever the monster attacks. Give the target their respective tokens. You can find what they do in the reference card. Poison and wound can only be removed if the figure is healed. When that happens, instead of healing the value, just remove the negative condition. Figures cannot have multiple instances of poison or wound. Curse adds an extra curse card to the figure's deck, and Bless adds an extra Bless card to the deck. These cards are removed if drawn or at the end of the scenario. To wrap up the mechanics, a character can perform a long rest action instead of playing cards during the round. When you declare a long rest, your character won't do any actions this turn, and its initiative is set to 99. Contrary to a short rest where you have to draw a random discard card to place it in the lost pile, the long rest allows the character to choose the card. Also, the character performs a heal 2 self action and upwrites all their spent items. Once a character reaches the door 1 and 2, read their respective breakpoints and populate the room with monsters. At the end of the Scenario 3, read the conclusion, then add Sticker 4, a ritual in stone, to C2. Add any experience points earned to your character sheet, plus 6 experience points. Remove any curses and bless cards added during the scenario from the character or monster modifier decks. From now on, every time you complete a scenario, each character gets 6 experience points. If you retrieved Treasure Chest 10, search for the reward on the page 31 of the glossary book. Now grab your character sheet and choose a perk as part of the scenario's reward. Each perk allows the character to choose any one effect from the list. Check the box next to it and apply the effect to your modifier deck. If you're adding new cards, take them from the character's specified attack modifier cards. These changes are permanent. Next, shuffle the city events and draw one. Read its introductory text, and the party chooses an option. Flip the card and read the corresponding outcome, then discard the card. It should never be used again. Starting now, each time you successfully complete a scenario, you must draw a city event. To wrap up Scenario 3, each character should retrieve all their level 1 cards and add them to their hand, removing all level A and B cards permanently. They will never be used again. You should have the number of cards specified in the top right corner of your character's mat. Each character will have a different number of cards.
Scenario 4. Setup. Open the scenario book to Scenario 4, a ritual in stone, and open the supplement scenario book to page 3, attaching it to the bottom of the page, like this. Retrieve the monster's stat cards, standees, and their ability decks, setting monsters to level 1. From now on, zealots, vermilion raiders, and giant spiders won't use the basic decks anymore. Use the decks that don't have basic written on them. Place all the tokens and tiles as explained on previous scenarios as well. Because there are no doors, all the monsters should be placed on the scenario. Retrieve the battle goal cards and shuffle them. Deal 2 cards for each player in secret. They should choose one and discard the other. If the character completes its objective by the end of the scenario, they will gain a checkmark. Add it to the notes section of your character sheet. Note that you should keep the objective secret from other players. Once you complete 3 checkmarks, the character will unlock a new perk of their choosing. Next, place the element board near the center of play and place the 6 element tokens on the inert column. Read the scenario introduction and special rules stopping at the section break. You need to meet the special rules criteria to read it. And now you're ready to learn how to play scenario 4. The goal of this scenario is to destroy all summoning stones and then kill all enemies. Hexes contained within a yellow border are objectives, in this case, the summoning stones. Each summoning stone have their health based on the number of characters, plus 1. For example, if you're playing with 3 characters, then it will have 4 health, 3 plus 1. These objectives can be targeted by characters, like enemies are. They cannot be affected by negative conditions and forced movement like push and pull, and characters cannot move through an objective, unless they use jump. Once a summoning stone is destroyed, place a destruction tile on it. You may move over a destroyed objective. Once you destroy 2 stones, read section break 1. And once 4 stones have been destroyed, read section break 2. If more than 1 enemy is required to spawn on a hex, just spread them around, like this. Besides using all the mechanics learned from the previous scenarios, your party will make use of the elements. Whenever a figure plays an ability that has an element icon, move the corresponding element's token to the strong column of the board at the end of the turn. At the end of every round, elementals will wane, moving 1 column to the left of the board from the strong to waning, and eventually from waning to inert. Elements on the waning or strong column can be consumed by figures to augment their abilities if the ability has this symbol on the top of the element. For example, the Twirling Star bottom ability is a 2 attack. If the character consumes a waning or strong fire elemental, besides the attack 2, the target will receive a wound token and also 1 experience point. Whenever you use an element, move the corresponding elemental token 1 column to the left. If the ability has the wild icon, it means the players choose which element will go to the right of the elemental board, or if it has the use icon, the players may decide which element is consumed. Once scenario 5 is completed, make sure to record your gold, experience points, and the treasure chest reward if you acquired it. Add the Deeper Understanding sticker scenario on C2 and decide which character will get the mana potion reward. Each character also receives their 3 level X cards and add them to their pool of available cards.
Scenario 5. Setup. Buy any items you want from the shop. Then play a city event, open the scenario and supplemental scenario book as indicated, set up the tokens, monsters, and stat cards as explained on the previous scenarios. The scenario has a boss, the Blood Tumor. Retrieve the boss monster ability deck, its stat card, and standee, then set it to level 1. And now you're ready to learn how to play Scenario 5. The scenario goal is to kill the Blood Tumor. The game rules are the same as the ones you learned from Scenarios 1 to 4. Whenever you enter the boss room, read the breakpoint and special rules. The boss mechanics are similar to regular enemies with some unique characteristics. Most of its ability deck consists of cards that read Special 1 or Special 2, which means the boss will use one of its 2 special abilities written on the stat card on its turn. The boss stats are often based on the number of characters, represented by the letter C. For example, this boss health is 10 multiplied by the number of characters, and its damage value is the number of characters. This boss does not move. On this section, you can find if the boss has immunities. In this case, this boss is immune to these 3 negative conditions. As stated on the special rules, the Blood Tumor starts the scenario with damage received based on the number of characters multiplied by 4. If any figure other than the boss suffers damage, the boss heals that amount of damage. If the boss is at max health at any point during the combat, the scenario is lost. Once the boss is defeated, read the conclusion and give 25 experience points to each player and add the next scenario sticker to the board. Whenever your character has experience value equal or higher than the threshold to the next level, which is written here, your character reaches the next level. Mark the next level on the character sheet. Then, retrieve the character's level 2 cards and add 1 to your pool of available ability cards. When you level up, you always get to add 1 new card equal to or lower than your new level. For example, when you reach level 3, you will select 1 card from either the 2 level 3 cards or the level 2 card you haven't chosen before. Note that you have to select from this pool a number of abilities per scenario equal to the number in the top right of your character's mat. Then gain 1 perk, and increase your max health to the number displayed on your character mat. Now let's talk about scenario level. The scenario level is the average level of the party divided by 2 and rounded up. So if all characters are now level 2, the average level divided by 2 would still be 1. When the party reaches level 3, you can increase the scenario level to 2, and so on. Use the following table to adjust the monster's level, gold conversion, trap damage, and bonus experience for completing scenario. Note that you can make the game easier or harder by adjusting the difficulty. For example, if you want to have a harder game, you can increase the level by 1. Whenever your character reaches level 5, they will open the other pack of ability cards in their deck. The following scenarios use the same rules learned so far, and that's how you play Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Did you like the tutorial? If so, hit the like button and subscribe to receive our latest how to play video updates. See you next time.